The morning sun beat down on the asphalt of the quick-stop gas station, creating shimmering heat waves that distorted the air. It was a day like any other for Mike Reynolds, a 23-year-old attendant who had been working at the station for the past 2 years to help pay his way through college. Standing behind the counter, he watched through the large windows as a gleaming white Range Rover pulled up to pump number 4, its pristine finish suggesting its owner took better care of the vehicle than most people did their children. The woman who stepped out wore oversized designer sunglasses that covered half her face, her platinum blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail that seemed to stretch her features unnaturally. Her manicured nails tapped impatiently against her designer purse as she swiped her credit card at the pump. Mike had worked here long enough to recognize the type, the kind who believed the world existed to serve her and her alone. Declined? This is ridiculous. The woman's voice carried across the station, causing several other customers to glance her way. She tried the card again, then a third time, her movements becoming increasingly aggressive with each attempt. Mike sighed. Card declines were uncommon, but they almost always led to the same reaction. Denial followed by anger, as if the gas station itself was personally responsible for their financial situation. Most people would eventually come inside, embarrassed, to try another payment method, but something told him this woman wouldn't follow the usual script. He watched as she yanked her phone from her purse and began an animated conversation, her free hand gesticulating wildly. Even through the glass, her voice carried, sharp and indignant. "This is absolutely unacceptable, David. I'm standing here like some kind of pauper with a declined card. What do you mean the account is overdrawn? That's impossible. I don't care what you have to do. Fix it now." The other customers were giving her a wide berth now, some hurrying to finish their business and leave. An older man at pump 6 caught Mike's eye and gave him a sympathetic look. The woman, whom Mike had mentally dubbed Range Rover Karen, ended her call by practically stabbing her screen with her finger. She stood there for a moment, seething, before storming toward the convenience store entrance. Mike straightened his name tag and prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The bell above the door chimed as she burst in, her designer heels clicking aggressively against the linoleum floor. "Excuse me," she said, not as a polite introduction, but as a demand for attention. "Your pump is broken. It declined my card, which is absolutely impossible." Mike summoned his best customer service smile. "I'm sorry about that, ma'am. Sometimes the bank puts a hold on cards when they're used at gas stations. Would you like to try another card or perhaps pay inside?" Her eyes narrowed behind her sunglasses, which she still hadn't removed despite being indoors. "Do you have any idea who I am? I drive a $60,000 vehicle. I don't have card problems." The line forming behind her shifted uncomfortably. A teenager with a slushie and a trucker waiting to pay for coffee exchanged glances. "I understand, ma'am," Mike said, maintaining his calm. "But sometimes these things happen. Perhaps your bank is having an issue today?" She leaned forward, her manicured nails splaying across the counter. "Listen, Mike," she said, reading his name tag with a tone that suggested his name was somehow offensive to her. "I need to get gas, and I need to get it now. So you're going to turn on that pump, and I'll sort this out with my husband later." Mike could feel the situation escalating in a way that years of customer service experience had taught him to recognize. What he couldn't possibly know was how catastrophically this encounter was about to transform his ordinary Wednesday morning. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't just turn on the pump without payment," Mike explained, keeping his voice level despite the woman's increasing hostility. "It's company policy. I could lose my job." The woman, whose actual name, as Mike would later learn from her credit card, was Bethany Whitfield, removed her sunglasses to reveal cold blue eyes that narrowed to slits. The gesture wasn't casual. It was calculated, like a predator focusing on its prey. "Listen to me carefully," Bethany said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "My husband plays golf with your district manager. One call, and you'll be looking for a new job tomorrow. Now are you going to turn on that pump, or do I need to make that call?" Mike felt a bead of sweat form at his temple. He'd dealt with threats before, but something about this woman's confidence made him hesitate. Still, rules were rules, and he couldn't afford to lose this job. "Maybe you could try calling your bank," he suggested, attempting to redirect the conversation. "Or I could process a different card for you." Bethany's perfectly lined lips curled into a sneer. "You think I carry around a wallet full of credit cards like some desperate housewife? This is my premium card, and there's nothing wrong with it. The problem is your cheap equipment." By now, the other customers were shifting uncomfortably. The trucker behind her in wine, and burly man with a salt and pepper beard, cleared his throat. "Lady, some of us have places to be," he said. "Maybe you could step aside while you sort this out." Bethany turned on him with such ferocity that the man actually took a step back. "Do not tell me what to do," she spat. "I was here first, and I'm not leaving until I get my gas." The teenager with the slushie had retreated to a display of chips, clearly wanting no part of the drama unfolding. An older woman who had just entered the store took one look at the situation and promptly turned around to leave. Bethany turned back to Mike, slapping her open palm on the counter. "Call your manager. Now." Mike reached for the store phone, his hands slightly trembling. This wasn't worth minimum wage and a small tuition stipend. He dialed Lisa, the shift manager, who was currently on her lunch break. "Lisa." "Yeah, it's Mike. I have a customer here with a declined card who wants to speak with management." He paused, listening. "Yes, I'd already explained the policy." Another pause. "Okay, thanks." He hung up the phone. "My manager will be here in about 10 minutes. She's on her break." The color rising in Bethany's cheeks was almost fascinating to watch, like mercury in a thermometer about to burst. 10 minutes? 10 minutes? I don't have 10 minutes to wait for some minimum wage manager. She fumbled in her purse and produced another card, despite her earlier claim of only carrying one. "Try this," she demanded, slapping it on the counter. Mike ran the card for the amount of gas she requested. The terminal beeped, and the word DC line ED appeared on the screen. "I'm sorry, but this one's also declined," Mike said, genuinely sympathetic despite his growing irritation. Something changed in Bethany's expression then. A sort of manic gleam entered her eyes. She snatched both cards back and stuffed them into her purse. "Fine, fine." She turned on her heel and stormed toward the door, stopping only to grab a bottle of water from a refrigerated display. Without paying for it, she twisted off the cap and took a long drink before slamming the half-empty bottle onto a shelf of snacks, knocking several packages to the floor. "Your service is a disgrace," she called over her shoulder as she pushed through the door. "Expect to hear from my attorney." The store fell silent as the door swung shut behind her. The trucker whistled low. "Buddy, I do not envy you right now," he said to Mike. "That there's a Category 5 Karen if I ever saw one." Mike nodded, exhaling the breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Thanks for your patience, everyone. Who's next?" As he rang up the trucker's coffee and the teenager's slushie, Mike kept one eye on Bethany through the window. Instead of getting back into her Range Rover, she was standing at pump number 4 again, jabbing at the keypad. The trucker followed Mike's gaze. "Oh, she's not giving up, is she?" Mike shook his head. "I better go out there before she breaks something." But as he moved to step out from behind the counter, Bethany did something that made his blood run cold. She grabbed the pump handle and with a strength born of pure rage began yanking it violently from its cradle. Mike bolted from behind the counter, nearly knocking over a display of energy drinks in his haste. The electronic chime of the door barely registered as he burst outside into the heat, the smell of gasoline and hot asphalt hitting him like a wall. "Ma'am, stop, you can't do that," he shouted, his voice cracking with panic. But Bethany was beyond reasoning. With each violent tug, the pump handle's hose stretched dangerously, the metal coil inside groaning under the strain. Her face was contorted in an expression of pure, unfiltered rage, the kind that obliterates rational thought. "This stupid machine." Each word was punctuated by another yank. Her designer purse had fallen to the ground, expensive makeup spilling across the concrete, but she didn't seem to notice or care. Mike approached cautiously, as one might approach a wild animal. "Please, ma'am, that equipment is very sensitive. There are emergency shut-off protocols, but don't you dare tell me what I can and cannot do," Bethany screamed, spinning to face him. Her ponytail had come loose, blonde hair now framing her face in a disheveled mess. "I have been humiliated. Do you understand what that's like? To be treated like a criminal over a simple banking error?" By now, a small crowd had gathered at a safe distance. The trucker stood in the doorway of the convenience store, cell phone raised, either to call for help or, more likely, to record what was quickly becoming a viral video in the making. A mother hurriedly ushered her children back into their minivan, while an elderly couple watched from the safety of their car, mouths agape. "I understand you're frustrated," Mike said, trying to recall his training for de-escalating tense situations. The problem was, his training had never covered someone attempting to destroy company property in a fit of rage. But damaging the pump won't solve anything. It could actually be very dangerous. For a moment, it seemed like his words might be getting through. Bethany paused, her chest heaving with exertion and emotion. Then her gaze drifted past Mike to the gathering crowd, and something in her snapped. The realization that she had an audience, that people were witnessing her meltdown, possibly recording it, seemed to push her over the edge. "You think this is funny?" she shrieked, addressing the onlookers. "You think it's entertaining to watch someone being discriminated against?" With one final powerful wrench, she pulled the pump handle completely free from its housing. There was a sickening tearing sound as the internal hose connection gave way, followed by a metallic screech of components never meant to separate being forced apart. Time seemed to slow down for Mike. He lunged forward, but it was too late. A pressurized spray of gasoline erupted from the broken pump, arcing through the air like a perverse fountain. The acrid smell intensified instantly as the fuel splashed across the concrete, creating a rapidly expanding puddle. Bethany stood frozen in shock, still clutching the detached pump handle as gasoline sprayed in all directions. The fine mist caught in her hair, soaked her designer blouse, and spattered across her face. For a split second, she looked almost comical, a deer in headlights holding the smoking gun of her own disaster. Then reality crashed back in. People began shouting and running. A man yelled about turning off engines. Someone else screamed about cigarettes and lighters. The elderly couple's car peeled out of the station with a screech of tires, narrowly missing a pickup truck that was trying to maneuver away from the growing lake of flammable liquid. Mike's training finally kicked in. He sprinted toward the emergency shoot-off, a large red button housed in a box at the corner of the building. His shoes slipped on the gasoline-slick pavement, and he nearly fell twice before reaching it. With a closed fist, he smashed the button, hearing a satisfying thunk as the station's fuel pumps immediately cut power. But the damage was already done. While the high-pressure spray had stopped, gasoline continued to slowly leak from the damaged pump, flowing downhill toward the street. The sharp, dangerous smell permeated everything, making eyes water and throats burn. Bethany still hadn't moved. She stood in a puddle of gasoline, the detached pump handle dangling from her manicured fingers, her designer clothes ruined and her carefully constructed image of superiority completely shattered. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, she appeared genuinely speechless. "Everyone back," Mike shouted, finding his authoritative voice at last. "Clear the area. Someone call 911. As if in a trance, Bethany finally dropped the pump handle. It clattered to the ground with a hollow metallic sound that seemed to echo across the suddenly quiet gas station. Her eyes met Mike's, and in them he saw something unexpected, not anger or defiance, but the dawning horror of someone who finally realized they had made a terrible, potentially deadly mistake. The wail of sirens grew louder as emergency vehicles approached the quick stop. The sound seemed to snap Bethany out of her shock. She looked down at her gasoline-soaked clothing, then at the destruction around her, as if seeing it all for the first time. This isn't my fault," she stammered, her voice having lost its commanding edge. "The equipment was faulty. Everyone saw it." No one responded to her claim. The few remaining bystanders had retreated to the far edge of the property, phones raised to capture the unfolding disaster. The trucker who had been behind her in line was directing traffic away from the entrance, warning approaching vehicles about the hazard. Mike had grabbed the station's fire extinguisher and the emergency spill kit from behind the counter, though he knew it was woefully inadequate for a spill of this magnitude. His hands trembled as he called out instructions to the remaining customers. "Please move your vehicles away if you can do so safely. No smoking, no engines running near the spill." In the distance, the first fire truck rounded the corner, lights flashing. The sight of it seemed to trigger something in Bethany. She began frantically gathering her scattered belongings from the ground, stuffing lipsticks and compacts back into her purse with gasoline-slick hands. "I need to leave," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "This is ridiculous. I'm going to be late for my appointment." Mike couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Ma'am, you can't leave. This is a hazardous spill that you caused. The authorities will need your information." Bethany's head snapped up, her eyes wild. "I did not cause this. Your faulty equipment did. And I am not staying here to be blamed for your incompetence." She began striding toward her Range Rover, leaving wet, gasoline footprints with each step. "Stop. You can't drive away," Mike called after her. "Your car could ignite the fumes, and you're covered in gasoline." She ignored him, fumbling with her key fob as she approached her vehicle. The first fire truck pulled into the lot, followed closely by a police cruiser. Firefighters in heavy gear began jumping out before the truck had fully stopped. "Step away from the vehicle, ma'am." A firefighter's amplified voice boomed across the lot. "Do not start your engine." Bethany froze, her hand on the door handle of her Range Rover. She turned slowly, taking in the sight of the emergency responders rushing toward the scene, the flashing lights reflecting in the puddles of gasoline, the gas station attendant with a fire extinguisher that suddenly seemed absurdly small. For one tense moment, Mike thought she might still try to flee. Instead, her shoulders slumped, and something seemed to deflate within her. The facade of entitlement cracked completely, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. The fire captain approached, his face grim behind his protective mask. "Who's responsible for this station?" he asked, his voice authoritative but calm. Mike stepped forward. "I'm the attendant on duty. I hit the emergency shoot-off, but as you can see," he gestured to the damaged pump and the expanding pool of fuel. The captain nodded, already assessing the situation. "And who disconnected the pump?" he asked, though his glance toward the gasoline-soaked woman made it clear he already knew the answer. Before Mike could respond, a police officer approached Bethany. "Ma'am, I need you to step over here, away from the spill area." "I need to clean up," Bethany said, her voice small and unrecognizable from the commanding tone she used earlier. "I have gasoline all over me." "The paramedics will help with that," the officer responded, firm but not unkind. "Right now, I need your identification and an explanation of what happened here." As Bethany was led away, Mike found himself cornered by another officer taking statements. From the corner of his eye, he could see the firefighters deploying foam to contain the spill, while others set up barriers to prevent the fuel from reaching the storm drains. Lisa, the shift manager, had finally arrived, her face pale as she took in the scene. "Oh my God, Mike, what happened?" Mike gestured to the broken pump. Card declined. Customer didn't take it well. Lisa's eyes widened. That's putting it mildly. She shook her head in disbelief. The district manager's already on his way, and corporate's been notified. Mike felt a knot form in his stomach. Despite doing everything by the book, he couldn't shake the feeling that this disaster would somehow cost him his job. As if reading his thoughts, Lisa placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You did everything right," she said firmly. "The security cameras caught it all. This isn't on you." Across the lot, Bethany sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, a foil blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The gasoline-soaked designer clothes had been replaced with a standard-issue hospital gown. Her makeup was streaked, her hair plastered to her head, and all traces of her earlier arrogance had vanished. As a paramedic checked her vital signs, an officer stood nearby, notepad in hand, documenting her statement. Mike couldn't hear what she was saying, but her body language told the story. Shoulders hunched, head bowed, occasional gestures that seemed more pleading than demanding. The transformation was so complete that if not for the white Range Rover still parked at Pump 4, he might have thought she was a different person entirely. 3 hours later, the quick-stop gas station resembled something between a crime scene and a hazardous waste cleanup site. Yellow caution tape fluttered in the afternoon breeze surrounding the perimeter. Men and women in protective gear moved methodically around the affected area, applying absorbent materials to the lingering fuel. The damaged pump stood cordoned off, looking almost wounded with its hanging wires and exposed internal components. Mike sat on a plastic chair behind the convenience store, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. His shirt still reeked of gasoline fumes despite changing into a spare uniform Lisa had found in the back office. His phone had been buzzing nonstop with texts from friends who had somehow already seen videos of the incident online. "How are you holding up?" Lisa asked, emerging from the back door with a fresh cup of coffee for him. Mike accepted it gratefully, still processing. He gestured toward the cleanup crew. "Any idea how much this is going to cost?" Lisa winced. The district manager mentioned something in the 5-figure range at minimum. "The environmental cleanup alone," she let the sentence hang unfinished. "And that doesn't even include the pump replacement," Mike added. "Or the lost revenue while we're closed," Lisa sighed. "We'll be shut down for at least 2 days, they're saying." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the methodical work of the cleanup crew. The police had finished taking statements from all witnesses an hour ago, and most of the emergency vehicles had departed. Only one police cruiser remained, parked near the convenience store entrance. "So what happened to her?" Mike finally asked. "Range Rover Karen, I mean." Lisa snorted at the nickname. "Bethany Whitfield," she corrected, having learned the woman's full name from the police report. "Currently facing charges for criminal damage to property, reckless endangerment, and environmental violations." Mike's eyebrows shot up. Environmental violations? Apparently discharging that much gasoline is a pretty serious offense. The officer said the EPA gets involved automatically when it's more than a certain number of gallons. Lisa took a sip of her own coffee. "And get this, her husband showed up while you were giving your statement. The one who supposedly plays golf with the district manager?" "The very same," Lisa confirmed with a hint of satisfaction. "Except it turns out he's never played golf in his life and has no idea who our district manager is. He works in insurance, of all things." Mike couldn't help but laugh at the irony. "Insurance? You're kidding." "No. And from what I've overheard, he was absolutely mortified. Kept apologizing to everyone and saying something about her episodes getting worse." Lisa lowered her voice. "Apparently their joint accounts were frozen due to suspected fraud. Someone tried to use their card number in another state. That's why her cards were being declined." "So this entire disaster happened because she couldn't be bothered to answer a fraud alert from her bank?" Mike shook his head in disbelief. "Basically, her husband got the alert but couldn't reach her because she blocked his calls after their fight this morning." Lisa sighed. The perfect storm of entitlement and bad timing. The back door opened again and the district manager, Mr. Patel, stepped out. Unlike the corporate stereotype Mike had imagined, Mr. Patel was a soft-spoken man in his 50s with kind eyes and a perpetually worried expression. Today, that worry seemed amplified. "Mike," he said, gesturing for him to join him inside. "The insurance adjuster would like to see you again, and there's someone else here you should speak with." Mike exchanged a glance with Lisa, who gave him an encouraging nod. Following Mr. Patel back into the building, he was surprised to find a woman in a crisp suit waiting in the office. She wasn't from the cleanup crew or the police. "Mike, this is Valerie Montrose." Mr. Patel introduced them. "She's from Quick Stop Corporate Legal." Mike felt his heart sink. This couldn't be good. Corporate legal meant lawsuits, liability, and potentially looking for someone to blame. He extended his hand anyway, trying to keep his expression neutral. "Actually," Valerie said, her handshake firm, "I'm here with some good news. The videos of the incident have already gone viral, over 2 million views across platforms in just a few hours." "I don't see how that's good news," Mike replied cautiously. Valerie smiled. "In every single video, your response is being praised as textbook perfect. You attempted de-escalation, followed all safety protocols, and handled an extremely dangerous situation with remarkable composure. You become something of a corporate hero, Mike." Mr. Patel nodded enthusiastically. "Corporate is very impressed. They're talking about featuring you in our safety training videos." Mike blinked, struggling to process this unexpected turn. "So, I'm not being fired?" Valerie and Mr. Patel exchanged surprised glances. "Fired? Quite the opposite," Valerie said. "Quick Stop is offering you a promotion to assistant manager with a substantial raise if you're interested. We value employees who can maintain professionalism under pressure." For the first time since Bethany Whitfield had stormed into the Quick Stop that morning, Mike felt the tension in his shoulders begin to ease. Outside, through the office window, he could see the cleanup continuing, the messy aftermath of entitlement and rage being methodically contained and neutralized. "There's one more thing," Valerie added, pulling a business card from her pocket. "A producer from a morning news show called. They want to interview you about the incident." She smiled wryly. Apparently, gas station hero faces down Karen is trending on social media. 2 weeks later, Mike Reynolds sat in the small green room of WNBC's morning show, Rise and Shine, nervously adjusting his new tie. The producer had already briefed him on what to expect, like questions, nothing confrontational, just a human interest piece about his viral moment of zen, as they were calling it. On the small monitor in the corner, Mike could see the hosts introducing the segment roll in the now infamous footage. The video, captured by the trucker with perfect timing, had become the stuff of retail worker legend. Minus 2.7 million views on TikTok, another 4 million on Twitter, countless reaction videos, and even merchandise with his calm response, "Please, ma'am, that equipment is very sensitive," printed on t-shirts and mugs. The strangest part was that this wasn't even his first interview. In the 14 days since the incident, he'd already spoken to 3 local news stations, a popular podcast about customer service nightmares, and had declined an offer to appear on a national talk show. Quick Stop Corporate had hired a media coach to help him navigate the unexpected spotlight, concerned about their brand image, but also recognizing a PR opportunity when they saw one. "We're on in 2 minutes, Mr. Reynolds," a production assistant said, poking her head into the room. Mike nodded, taking a deep breath. His phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Don't forget to mention your hardworking manager," followed by a winking emoji. She'd been promoted to store manager after Mr. Patel had recommended Mike for the assistant manager position at a larger, busier Quick Stop location closer to his university. As he waited to be called onto the set, Mike couldn't help but reflect on how surreal the aftermath had been. The Quick Stop had reopened after 3 days of intensive cleanup, with a brand new pump system that the corporation had expedited. The environmental inspector had declared the site safe, thanks to the quick response of the hazmat team. And then there was Bethany Whitfield. The media had been relentless in their coverage of the gas station Karen, as she'd been dubbed. Her identity had been discovered within hours, her social media accounts flooded with criticism. Mike had deliberately avoided reading the comments sections, uncomfortable with the intensity of public shaming, deserved as it might have been. What he hadn't been able to avoid was the formal apology letter that had arrived at the Quick Stop 5 days after the incident. Written on expensive stationery, the handwritten note expressed profound regret for her behavior, acknowledged the danger she had caused, and included a personal check to cover his lost wages during the station's closure, a gesture her lawyer had likely suggested to demonstrate remorse before her court date. The most surprising development had come yesterday, when he received a call from David Whitfield, Bethany's husband. The conversation had been awkward but sincere, with David explaining that Bethany had begun therapy sessions to address her impulse control issues and entitlement patterns. She'd been sentenced to 200 hours of community service, most of which would be served at a local environmental cleanup organization, along with a substantial fine and mandatory anger management classes. "We're ready for you, Mr. Reynolds," the production assistant announced, interrupting his thoughts. As Mike followed her to the brightly lit set, he realized that in a strange way the entire incident had changed more lives than just his own. The viral video had sparked conversations about customer service abuse, entitlement culture, and the psychological toll of working in retail. Several states were even considering legislation to increase penalties for assaulting or threatening service workers, a bill that one legislator had informally nicknamed the Karen Act. The host greeted him warmly as he settled into the guest chair, microphone clipped to his collar. The main host, a woman with a practiced smile, leaned forward. "So, Mike, walk us through what was going through your mind when you saw this woman yanking on the gas pump. Were you frightened? Angry? How did you stay so calm?" Mike smiled, thinking about his response. The truth was simple. Years of working retail had trained him to expect the unexpected, to remain professional in the face of unreasonable behavior, to follow protocols even when chaos erupted. But he knew that wasn't the whole story. "Honestly," he began, "in that moment, I was just doing my job. I never expected it to become this phenomenon. But if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that how we respond to difficult situations defines us more than the situations themselves." The host nodded approvingly. "And what would you say to Bethany Whitfield if she were watching right now?" Mike paused, genuinely considering the question. He thought about the woman he'd seen sitting broken and humiliated on the ambulance bumper, the carefully worded apology letter, the husband trying to make amends for a family member's very public mistake. "I'd say that one bad day, one bad decision doesn't have to define a person forever," he answered finally. "We all have moments we're not proud of. Hers just happened to be captured on camera and shared millions of times." As the interview continued, somewhere across town, Bethany Whitfield sat in her therapist's office, working through the humiliation and consequences of her actions. She deleted all her social media accounts, changed her phone number, and had started wearing her hair differently to avoid being recognized in public. Her husband had suggested they move, maybe to another state where the video hadn't been as widely shared. But she refused. Running away felt too much like admitting defeat. Instead, she committed to facing the aftermath head-on, surprising both her lawyer and her husband with her determination to complete her community service without complaint. The irony wasn't lost on her that she caused thousands of dollars in damage over a declined credit card that would have been resolved with a simple phone call to her bank. Her therapist had helped her recognize the pattern, the sense of entitlement, the rage when that entitlement was challenged, the impulse to destroy rather than concede. Small steps, her therapist reminded her at the end of each session, one day at a time. And while Bethany Whitfield worked on her recovery away from the public eye, Mike Reynolds finished his interview, thanked the hosts, and headed back to his apartment to study for his upcoming exams. His 15 minutes of fame would eventually fade, the viral video would be replaced by newer, more dramatic content, and life would gradually return to normal. But for those who had witnessed or been affected by the gas station incident, something fundamental had shifted. A reminder that in a world where cameras capture our worst moments, how we handle the aftermath matters just as much as the moment itself. As Mike left the television studio, his phone buzzed with a news alert. He smiled when he read the headline. "Quick Stop announces new de-escalation training program for all employees, named after gas station hero." It wasn't the legacy he'd ever imagined having, but it was one he could be proud of. The end.